Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and good friend Brad. What's going on, dude?
Not much, man. I mean, I'm a little tired this morning. I was telling you before we hit record that my buddy and I have this tradition that goes back, I don't know, probably 10 years, that we go to this all-you-can-eat Brazilian steakhouse. You know, it's called Tucanos. It's very similar to like Fogo de Chao or, what's the other one? Texas State Brazil. But we went there pretty late last night. So I had all-you-can-eat steak and filet mignon and turkey wrap bacon and all this other stuff at, we didn't get out of there till about 9. And then you and I I'm up at 6 to record. So I'm feeling it today. But things are good, man. How are you?
Doing good.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned it before, but I actually took a new job. So yesterday was my last day of employment at my former employer. And I am actually, believe it or not, unemployed for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. I got a small surgery scheduled next week. So rather than start and then just have to take a few days off, we decided to just delay it. And
Nice.
I'd just be the unemployed bum for a week or two.
What are you going to do with yourself?
I am sure I'll keep busy. So my daughter actually starts field hockey tryouts next week.
Nice.
Which start at 7 a.m. So it's not like I'll be sleeping in. I got to bring her to those. And then, Monday and Tuesday, I got stuff to do around the house. I'm starting to build a home gym. So I got a little bit of work I can be doing on that. And then the surgery is Wednesday. So not sure how the recovery is going to be.
Yeah. You told me what kind of surgery you're having, and recovery from it can be a little dicey. So, I mean, you'll be fine, but it's just, it'll be a few funky days.
It's deviated septum. It's nothing, big deal. Yeah. But it's, from what I've heard, I've got a couple of friends who have had that and have also done the shoulder surgeries that I've had. And they've all said that they'd rather have the shoulder surgery again. So just because of the recovery.
Yeah. Like when I had it, the recovery is not long, but like those first few days suck.
That's what they said.
Feeling like you have absolute vertigo and like moving your head too quickly makes you feel like you want to pass out. Yeah, it's fun.
It sounds like fun. And I do not think I'm mentally prepared for this. Like I think I'm going in and be like, it's just a small little thing on my nose. Like how bad can it be? It's like I'm trying to change my mindset and I'm having actually a really hard time doing that. So this should be fun.
It'd be great. It'd be good. But when you come out the other side and you can breathe through that nostril, it's going to be the most amazing thing. You won't even be able to believe it. You're like, blow your mind.
I'm hoping that, running and mountain biking improve because of it. So we were talking a little bit before the call about the idea of, like joy in the journey. And I think that's something that we can really kind of dig into in terms of both what it means and then some real world applications that we've got going on. So I know you were the one who brought it up. So maybe you can flesh it out a little bit and then we'll get going on it.
I mean, ultimately the idea is that sometimes we take on projects or tasks or there's a new thing that we dive into and they can be difficult. There can be things that, you set out this expectation that, I'm going to learn this and it's going to be amazing. Or I'm going to build this and it's going to be incredible. And then it gets difficult. And that difficulty can manifest itself in any number of ways. But this idea is, okay, I'm taking on something new. That thing can be very difficult. It can be challenging. And it might take a long time. It might be arduous. There might be days where you get pretty pissed off. But there comes a point where you learn to find joy and satisfaction and contentment in that battle or in that journey or the thing that you're undertaking. At some point, you kind of realize, this is hard. This is going to take me a lot longer than I thought it would, or this is not exactly what I signed up for, but I'm going to enjoy it as I see it through.
Mm-hmm.
So along those lines, obviously you and I have both been doing things. I think all of us have where, we find some joy, some purpose, some meaning in that journey. So I guess to send it back over to you, one, how would you describe that? And two, are there any real life examples that kind of come to mind that help illustrate that?
That phrase or the old saying, it's not the destination, it's the journey comes to mind with this conversation, right? It's a lot of times when we do hard things or we work on something for a long time or even just sometimes going on vacation. it's not always about where you're going or where you're aiming to be at the end, but the journey, the battle, the fight to get there. I look at you, and I probably might be stealing your thunder on one example, but I look at you with jujitsu,
Right.
and the goal is probably at some point to become a black belt, but you have to embrace the journey, the daily grind, if you will, to enjoy the process, because it's so far away that you can't just sit there and beat your crap out of yourself for years and years and years to get to that one moment in time. You have to enjoy the process. And that's something I've learned over time with, with at home, at work, that kind of thing, is you have to enjoy the work. You have to find joy and, what's the word I'm looking for? Appreciation in the actual work. So as a project manager at work, I have a final goal. It's to design a product or to ship a certain amount of product to a customer or whatever it is. It's clearly defined. But my job is to manage more so the process to get there than the actual end goal. And that is where I've really learned to excel and also enjoy the work. It's the problem solving that comes in that interim between start and finish. It's dealing with all the unexpected things that happen and figuring out how to shift course, how to make decisions about what's best for, with that end goal in mind. What do we do with this problem that we have right now to make sure that we're moving towards that end goal, but we're also seeing success and not just stopping here? So there's a lot of things, a lot of places we can go for with it. But I'll give you one example right now at home. I'm building out a home gym, which is something I've always wanted. I always hate. So I'm a morning gym guy. And I think I've sent you multiple texts over the last couple months about how pissed off I am that I walk into the gym at 5:03 when it opens at 5 o'clock, and there's already every squat rack and every deadlift platform is filled. And it's like, come on, it's 5:03 in the morning. How do we have this many squat racks filled? So I decided, screw it, I'm going to make my dream a reality. So I'm in the process right now of planning it out. I've been doing a lot of research on cost and, all this stuff. And now I'm in the process of actually acquiring a lot of material, which is the fun part to me is getting the gear, because, as well, I'm a gear guy. But, we run into problems too. Like yesterday, I went to buy horse stall mats, and anybody who knows Long Island knows that we don't have a lot of tractor supply stores around here. We are not exactly a agricultural area, but out east we do have some farms, so there are a couple of tractor supplies out east. So I drove 45 minutes yesterday and hit 2 tractor supplies, and that they had 4x6 horse stall mats, but they have like a diamond plate design on the top, which is not exactly what I wanted, and it pissed me off a little bit because what they advertise online is the nice flat tops. I had to kind of pivot and come home and do a lot of research and figure out, do I want to get those, whatever. So it's just a little problem within the bigger project. But to me, there's actually joy in that I'm doing the research, I'm making decisions, I'm determining what's right and what's wrong, and moving forward. The whole mini project within it of picking a rack to buy. I've got 83-inch ceilings in my basement, so I'm very limited in terms of what I can put down here, because most squat racks or power racks are 90-ish inches tall. So it was, do I buy something and cut it down? Do I try to find something that fits? And, there was a lot of research that went into my decision making. But there's a process in there that I really enjoy. And it's not about the end product. Yes, I'm going to be very happy when I keep looking over to my right, as we talk, and that's where my gym's going to be. I'm going to be very happy when there's weights and a barbell and a rack over there. But I'm also really enjoying the process of this and the project of it. And I find value in it. And I personally take away a sense of purpose through the whole thing. So I know that was kind of a long roundabout discussion, but I think it gives a little bit of background of why I find value in the journey in the project and not just, the end result.
And you mentioned a couple things in there that really stuck out. That whereas other shouldn't say other guys, I think there might have been a time in your past even where you would have seen these as impediments and thrown in the towel. You want a horse stall mat. You go to all the Tractor Supply stores in Long Island. I don't know if you went to all of them, but you went to at least a couple. They
I
didn't
think I
have
went
it.
to all of them.
I've got like 2 Tractor Supply
I guess
stores
2 or
in my
3, yeah.
town. But that's the difference between Utah and Long Island, right? But you could have gone there. They didn't have them. That's an impediment. You're like, oh, I'm just going to throw in the towel. I'm going to get pissed. I didn't get what I expected. I'm mad. This sucks. You easily could have said, I give up. Another one being most squat racks are typically 90 inches. Your basement's 83. So instead of saying, oh, I'm going to find a solution, I'm going to find a way through this, I'm going to find a way or make one, as you and I like to say, you could have simply just thrown in the towel. Gotten pissed and said, I want a home gym. It's too short. Not going to happen. Those are things that, you probably could look back and say, there have been a time in your life where you simply would have gotten mad, gotten frustrated, given up. And for me, one of the things I think about is, again, it's the low-hanging fruit if you talk to me about life, but it really is jujitsu. I mean, for anybody who's done jujitsu, when you start rolling, you have to learn how your body works. You're starting to do movements you've never done before. And when you roll with other folks, you constantly getting submitted. You're getting thrown an arm triangle. You're getting thrown a leg triangle. You're getting rear naked choked. You're getting guillotined. And then, you reset, you go with somebody else. That next person you roll with gets in a guillotine, or they get you in an arm bar. You roll with somebody else, and it's a rinse and repeat. It's a constant show of humility and getting your butt kicked. And it's also very much a mental journey. You sit there at one point, you've been doing jujitsu, like I've been doing jujitsu for 18 months at this point, and I still get my butt handed to me. I'll roll with a purple belt, and my defense has gotten a lot better, but I still get caught. Here I am getting thrown into a crucifix, and okay, cool. I submitted. And at various points, there have been times where I'm like, I still suck. And this is ridiculous. I should be better than this. You start to tell yourself these messages. You start to doubt yourself. You start to resent the fact that you're not as good as you think you should be. And, you go to class, you train, you're doing all these things. And every now and again, you see light. You see that you're making progress and you're growing. But then you're quickly humbled once again. And that journey can be difficult. It's harrowing. It's humbling. And there comes a point, and there came a point for me, and in reality, there are multiple points where this has happened, where there's a recognition that I suck, and that's okay. I'm not good, and that's okay. I need to learn to appreciate these opportunities where I get submitted, and somebody gets me and just tosses me around like a rag doll, because they're going to make me better. And you fall in love with it, and you start to realize, okay, I find myself constantly getting into arm bars. What can I do? How can I change my defense? Change how my shoulders are? Change how my body's facing? Can I turtle up to get out of these situations? You start to learn defensive tactics. You start to learn mechanisms and moves and different things like that to prevent that. And you start to fall in love with the process. You start to find joy and purpose and meaning as you do it. The pain doesn't always go away. It still sucks. But you realize I'm doing this for a good reason. I'm growing. I'm getting better. It's really freaking hard, but I love it. I love the struggle. I love the battle. And that's what it's about, is understanding and learning. And this isn't a linear thing, but understanding and learning that those hardships and those failures are things that are always going to happen no matter what, and learning to embrace them and use them as leverage points to get better. So I guess the question is, because this is something I've dabbled with and thought about quite a bit, is what do we have to do to shift our mindset to go from, oh my gosh, woe is me, to I view this as opportunity?
That's a really good question. At the beginning of this conversation, we talked about embracing the journey and not just the destination. And that's really the mindset shift that you're talking about here. In my experience, that's one of those things that we need to find on our own. And I think that a lot of guys don't find it, and they get so hung up with the end result that they don't appreciate that the journey is what creates it. We always talk about how growth comes from the discomfort, right? Growth is a byproduct of hard work and failure. You fail enough times, you're going to figure out how to not fail, right? I'm sure in jiu-jitsu, you have been submitted the same way more times than you care to admit, but you eventually start to see signs of, I'm heading down that road, so I need to counter this move or something like that. I'm so
Yeah.
illiterate in jujitsu.
No, it's accurate.
But we see that at the same time. I see that at work with some of the engineering stuff I do. Is you start to see patterns. You start to see the same problems occur, but because you've been exposed to it, now you know how to fix it. You know how to avoid it and recognize it. I think about the guy who works on his truck a lot, right? If you got an old pickup truck and you're lifting it and you're putting a new exhaust on it and you're doing all these things. If you're brand new to it and you've never really turned a wrench before, you don't know how to get leverage on the wrench with a sticky bolt or something like that. But as you progress through the process, you start to see problems. You start to learn little tricks and tips, and you can avoid big hurdles just based on experience. So I think that's part of it. And I think a lot of guys don't let themselves get to the experienced point, if that makes sense. They don't let themselves wallow in the failure, wallow in the and wallow's probably not the right word, but steep in it and really kind of accept it so that they can learn from it and move forward. I know that with this home gym that I'm working on, for instance, like I've done so many projects around the house that I knew something as simple as creating a budget for it. I knew that I had to price everything out that I wanted and then add in a certain percentage overage to cover unforeseen things, to cover tax and shipping and all that stuff. And just understand that what I calculated out just based on my online shopping is not necessarily going to be what the final cost is. It's such a simple thing, but it's a good example of what I'm talking about here. But to your question about how to get to the point where you embrace the journey, you almost have to have gone through a couple journeys to see the value in them. If you know what I mean, like you have to have forced yourself to do hard things a couple of times and see the end result. And that might take white knuckling a few of these situations because you're not understanding the value of a hard journey yet. It might just mean just holding on real tight and just getting shit done and working through the problems, even though you want to quit because you don't see the value in the work as opposed to just wanting to get to that end result. I look at something as simple as, you got to clean the house, right? It's your Saturday, it's your day off, and you got to clean the house. All you want to do is get to that clean house. You don't want to do the mopping and the sweeping and the dishes and the dusting and the bathroom and all that stuff. But you do it a couple times and you understand that end result is something you enjoy so much, that nice, clean, fresh smelling house, that the work is something you might not ever enjoy it, but you appreciate the work more than just having to do it and get to that end result. Does that make sense at all?
No, of course it makes sense. And that's the reality is when you start to, there are a lot of examples of exactly what you said. Like the cleaning the house one's an interesting one in that nobody enjoys cleaning a house. Nobody enjoys scrubbing a toilet. Nobody enjoys cleaning counters. I mean, when my wife tells me, "Hey, Brad, I need you to sweep the floor while I'm at work," I hate it because our entire main level of our house is wood flooring, and it's a lot of sweeping. I hate this, but there's satisfaction when you get it done and you look around and like, this is great, and it tells you something about yourself. It is, I am the type of man who does not live in squalor. I'm the type of man who doesn't let food and crumbs. I've got small kids. They spill food. It's wild how much food they spill all over the floor,
Yeah.
right?
That's why we've always had dogs.
And you look and you're like, I am a man who enjoys living in a clean house, and I know that I need to work to maintain that. And that says a lot about yourself. And you start to tell your things about yourself. And as soon as you do that, those hard, mundane tasks or those things you don't want to do, as you start to tell yourself, I am this type of man. I am this person. This comes back to basic atomic habits principles in a lot of ways. Some of those mundane tasks, some of those hard things become that much more doable. Yep. And the other thing that I think about a lot is when you look at life, this was something I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine literally just yesterday about. Most things in life aren't happy. We don't spend most of our lives truly, blissfully, joyfully happy. Like there's a lot of struggle. And I would argue most of the time there's some level of struggle or disappointment or hardship. And those moments of joy are fleeting. But you start to realize that because I'm aspiring to X, I know that I need to go through all this other stuff to get there. And it actually brings me to this quote that I love. I heard this quote for the first time 15 years ago, and I think about it all the time. And it says, anyone who imagines that bliss is normal is going to waste a lot of time running around shouting that he's been robbed. Most putts don't drop. Most beef is tough. Most children grow up to be just people. Most successful marriages require a high degree of mutual toleration. Most jobs are more often dull than otherwise. Life is like an old-time rail journey. Delays, sidekicks, smoke, dust, cinders, and jolts, interspersed only occasionally by beautiful vistas and thrilling bursts of speed. The trick is to thank the Lord for letting you have the ride. And you think of that quote and how applicable it is. How often we see disappointment. We find disappointment, hardship, struggle, challenges. We have all these intentions and that are grandiose, and we think that everything's going to work out exactly the way that we want them to. Every time we take on a new project, it's going to go perfectly. It's going to be awesome. Because we're short-sighted creatures and very quickly realize, I've got hardship. My ceilings are 83 inches. That presents a challenge. I go to Tractor Supply Company and all their horse stall mats are diamond top, right? I'm going to be awesome at jujitsu. I'm going to get my black belt. And, here I am a year and a half later, and I'm still getting caught in the armbar that I thought I would have had figured out by now. That's life, right? That's just how it is. We will get there. You will have your home gym. I will have my black belt. Those things will happen. They absolutely will. But when you learn to recognize that there's hardship and that you still struggle with things and things that you thought you were good at, you still suck at. Those are the reasons you will get there. It's the hardship that will drive you there and get you there. And as you learn to embrace that hardship and understand it and appreciate it for what it is, that's when you start to find joy.
There's a lot of good wisdom in there. The thing that you hit on early about when we were talking about cleaning the house and the way you feel at the end and the way that it presents yourself, it got me thinking a lot about morals and values and how that ties into this. And that really is a lot of how you get through the hardships and how you get through the hard part of the journey. Is this the man that I am or that I want to be? Does the man that I am striving to be stop when things get hard, or does he find a way through it? Does he find a solution? Does he work hard to get to that end result? That, to me, has been, and it's a mindset shift that definitely I've gone through, and it's been something that's changed me in the last 3 or 4 years, in the sense of being able to remove myself from the situation a little bit and really take a look at it and go, would stopping here be appropriate for who I want to be? Because listen, there are definitely projects that you start or processes that you start that you should stop. There's reasons to stop certain projects. It's a waste of time. You're spending good money after bad. It's detrimental to your health. All kinds of different reasons. But just because it's getting hard doesn't mean that one of those reasons is present. So you do need to do some kind of, take a step, detach and evaluate a little bit. But in that evaluation part, you have to be looking at your morals, your values, your ethics, and going, does the man I aspire to be stop the process at this point? And if so, why? And if not, then why am I stopping here? And I think that's a big part of growing as a man in terms of developing those skills to do hard things. Because you're never going to see success in life. I can't think of one person who has had success in life and hasn't had to do hard things. And hard things doesn't necessarily mean, living in the woods and chopping wood for your heat and whatever. But there are guys who in business do hard things. There are guys at home in family who do hard things. There are guys who physically do hard things and have challenges that they have to overcome. And is that your makeup, or do you run away at the first sense of problem? That's part of embracing the journey too, is understanding not only the particular thing that you're doing, but how it's going to help transform you into the person and the man you want to be.
If you think about every successful man that's out there, he's had to embrace those difficult things. He's had to learn how to overcome challenges, right? There has to be some level of purpose or joy in that journey for them to get there. You think of, you could name any successful man in any endeavor. There was hardship along the way. No, I mean, to your point, nobody's naturally gifted at anything. I mean, yes, there is some natural gifts that will allow. I take that back. There are men who are naturally gifted at lots of things.
Right.
But to put everything together to the point where you can become successful is so much easier said than done. You think of unfulfilled potential. All of us have friends who are incredibly intelligent, but they work at a dead-end job, barely scraping by. We have friends that, I've got friends that I knew in college that were athletic monsters who are now severely overweight and sitting on the couch.
Yep.
They had those natural gifts and they squandered them away because there more than likely came a point where there was adversity or challenge, and rather than face it down and try to do something about it, they may have found resistance and thrown in the towel. You could honestly say that about all of these men with unfulfilled potential. They were on the path to do something great, and they're no longer doing that.
Yep.
Hardship got in the way. They gave up, and they lost their way. Same can be said for us in all kinds of things. As you evaluate your life, you think of the things that you at one point have been talented in, or something you're good at. Why are you not excelling in that area of your life? Like, one thing I knew about myself was I have a way of being able to inspire people and help drive them and like do things like that. And how long of my life I squandered that away. I discovered that about myself when I was in my early 20s. And I spent the next 10 years pissing that away. And meeting you guys obviously helped kind of bring that back. But I spent 10 years of that because college got in the way. It got hard. There were probably times along the way where I thought I had conversations with somebody where I was trying to inspire them. It didn't work out. And then I just hid it under a bushel. We're all guilty of those things. But the key and the trick is successful men, when hardship comes, they learn something from it. They use that as a springboard to propel themselves forward. And they look back, and they can almost look back fondly on all that hardship, those hard things, and say, those are what defined me. Those are what got me through to the other side. We've talked ad nauseum about those moments in our lives where they were defining moments, they were turning points that got us on track. Those are the things that we must seek out continually. Those are the things that we will learn to appreciate, and we should never run from them. If you hit a roadblock, that's a good thing. How can you overcome that roadblock? What can you do to find a way through? And as you do that, that's where that purpose comes. That's where that joy comes. We've mentioned it a couple times on this episode, and we had a previous episode dedicated to it. The very concept of finding a way or making one.
Yep.
That's what it's all about. When hardship happens, when roadblocks hit, what's your path through?
And the great thing about that is it builds character in the rest of your life, right? If you've got one instance where you're working through the hardship, you're going to be able to lean on that moment the next time you do something hard. So this conversation reminds me of the conversation we had with Jake and Andy about our hike in New Hampshire. That was a hard situation that we were in, but two things occurred there. One was when shit started going sideways, I was able to rely on past experiences to kind of like calm myself down and be like, okay, things are not as bad as they seem. You've been through hard things before. You know that it's literally just figure out the next step and the step after that and go on and go forth. And also, the flip side to that is the experience of being in that situation and working through that hard thing has proven to me that in the future, when I get into a jam and I get into a hard situation, if I take a step back, breathe, and evaluate, I could probably get through that situation too and be okay. So as you do hard things, you're building a library of reference to go back to and say, I'm a man capable of solving problems and getting through hard things. I've proven it this time, this time, this time, and this time. This is no different. Yes, the circumstances are different, but the situation is the same. It's a roadblock on the journey that I'm trying to take to get to this final destination. And I just need to evaluate what's going on, make a smart decision, and move forward. And I'll tell you guys a little secret too. This is something I was talking about with a friend yesterday. Sometimes making the wrong decision and moving forward is actually better than overanalyzing the situation. Course correction is so much easier than getting over the initial inertia of not being started down the road. Getting moving and course correcting is so much easier than getting started. Just get started, make a decision, move forward. And if it's not working, you course correct, but at least you're doing something. You're being proactive. But these are all lessons that you learn through the course of going through hard things. That journey, that process of constantly putting yourself into these situations establishes these reference points that you can go back to and rely on, so that in the future, when you hit hard things, the action may be hard, but the process and decision making becomes actually easier.
How much of that would you have learned had you decided to spend that weekend at home?
Yeah, none. Yeah, but like I said, it's an amalgamation of things, right? Like I had already had history of doing hard things in the past. I relied on that when we were in New Hampshire. So I relied on that, but the experience in New Hampshire now also adds to the breadth of history I have with hard decisions in hard situations, so that going forward, I've got even more background to rely on in my decision-making process.
And that comes back to the whole concept of, choosing to sit on the sidelines. Like if you don't get yourself out there, if you don't challenge yourself, how little you're going to learn about yourself and how little your life will change. I mean, you easily could have been Brad over here saying, I can't make it to New Hampshire to do that trip. Which, I mean, obviously I had circumstances, but the fact of the matter is I had to choose to sit on the sideline. There are life lessons that I missed out on by making that decision.
Yep.
There really are. There are so many life decisions that we refuse to make, or that we're scared to make, or that we find excuses not to make, where we willingly choose the sidelines. We willingly choose not to get involved or do that thing because it's too hard, or I don't know if I can do it, or I was initially rejected, or whatever. Insert any number of excuses, because God knows there are millions of them. And go ahead.
I was going to say, we're going down a little bit of a tangent here, but this also goes back to the concept that Matt Reynolds brought up when we talked to him about voluntary hardship.
Yeah.
If you constantly put yourself in situations where you have to do hard things, you build calluses towards the difficulties of life. And by building those calluses, you're able to overcome things. I won't say easier, but you're able to have a better reaction when they occur.
100%. And it is a tangent, but I do think that it's a relevant one in that we find ourselves not choosing hardship, avoiding things. And when we avoid those things, we lose purpose in life. We lose meaning. It's those hard things that define us. It's those hard things that give us that character. It's those hard things that create us and make us into the men that we need to be. It was wild. I've told you, and I've talked about this on this podcast before, that I do Uber occasionally, right? I was doing a little bit yesterday, and I had multiple conversations about about this concept of choosing comfort versus hardship, and how hardship defines you and makes you better, and you find purpose. And in fact, in one of those conversations, which I think was probably the impetus to me, talking to you about this idea to begin with, I was having this conversation with this lady. Her husband's in the military, and it was kind of an interesting story. I picked her up, and she has a car, and when I pulled to go pick her up, there were like cops everywhere, and like the block was blocked off. And she gets in. She's like, "Yeah, I had to hail a ride because my car's in there. There's a bomb threat, and they shut it down." And I'm like, wow. She's telling me that she didn't have car seats. She had to go pick up her kids from daycare and figure out a way home, and figure all this stuff out. And that really sprung a pretty interesting, compelling conversation about hardship, about how willingly refraining from hardship and doing hard things has made people miserable. It's challenge, it's adversity where people find purpose, they have gratitude, and ultimately they find joy. You do hard stuff and you're happier. It's just like, that's a very anecdotal claim. I can't throw data at you to back that up, but I know in your life, when you've done something hard, you felt contentment, you felt purpose, you felt joy. When you've chosen the easy route, when you sat on the couch and you sat on the sidelines, you don't feel that. You may feel comfort, but then what comes after that?
Yeah. Whenever we talk about this, and I don't know that I've ever actually brought this up to you, but whenever we talk about this, I'm reminded of eulogies for some reason. And the reason for that is when you listen to people get up and they eulogize somebody who's passed on, they don't talk about all the time they spent sitting on the couch watching TV. They talk about all the things that they've done and the accomplishments that they've made. He was such a good dad. He did this, this, and this. He was such a great businessman. He did this, this, and this. He was such a great athlete. He was able to accomplish this, this, and this. None of those things came without hard work, dedication, and problem solving in hard situations. So, where am I kind of going with this is that those are the things that define us as men. The accomplishments, but more so the journeys and the hard work that we put in to get there is what define us as men. I think about my father, right? My father was never a super successful business person. He was never a super successful athlete. I will always remember my dad. I remember him now, and God willing, years from now, when he passes on, I'll remember him for the way he used to work. My dad was a pit bull at work, and he was always working hard and overcoming obstacles. And that's what I'll remember. One of my most vivid memories of my dad, so he was a plumber, and I think I've told this story before, but one of the most vivid memories I have of my dad is him having to put a cast iron tub in a second floor bathroom, strapping the damn tub to his back, climbing a ladder and walking in a hole in the side of the house that had been put there because of the remodel. My dad's 5'9". He's 5'7.5" now, probably because of that kind of stupid shit. But 5'9" little fire plug of a man, and just nothing stopped him. But it was that hard work and problem solving that will always stick with me. And that will probably be a story I tell, at his eulogy, because it was such a powerful thing to me. But it's the concept of hard work, problem solving, and just enjoying that journey, embracing that will to succeed, as opposed to not just getting there.
Love it, man. I love it. Honestly, when you started talking about your dad, because you shared that story with me, and I was hoping that's where you were going, because that is such a badass thing.
It's just, and he was my age when he did it, and in my early 40s now, I'm sitting there going, man, I'm freaking, and I work an office job. Like, I haven't been working in the field for the last 25 years like he was. Like, and I'm sitting there going, I don't know that that's something I would do, but he had no other option. He was a solo guy. He ran his own business, didn't have an apprentice, didn't have a helper. He had an 11-year-old son who sure as hell wasn't going to be carrying a tub up the stairs with him, and he had to figure it out.
That's awesome, man. I honestly don't even know what to add after that. It's just such an embodiment of this whole concept right there.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that guys got the idea that the joy of the journey is the hard work, is the problem solving, is the things that you learn about yourself along the way. That's really what I want them to come away from this episode with. It's, we do hard things, not just to do hard things, but we do hard things to make ourselves better men, and to improve our environments, to improve our experiences, and to provide for the people around us. And if you can embrace the journey while you're doing it, you will become a stronger version of yourself.
100%.
Cool. All right, fellas. Well, thank you again for listening. I always enjoy episodes like this where Brad and I get to riff a little bit, because it's just, we get ideas out, and we get to talk about things that mean a lot to us. So I hope you found value in it. If you did, make sure you're giving us a rating and review on your podcast player. It's the combination of those. I know I say it every week, but it's the combination of those two things that really helps us get the word out and spreads us out to the masses. So please go in, leave a rating and a review for us in your podcast player. Make sure you're checking us out at untamingmasculinity.com. You'll find show notes for this and all of our other episodes there, as well as links to our social media. Brad and I are active both on the Untaming Masculinity social media, as well as our own private Instagram account. So check us out, interact with us there. One of the latest ones you'll get to see is Brad's ugly mug with our friend Clint when they were rolling jiu-jitsu. So check it out.
Clint's uglier than me.
It's debatable. And finally, make sure you're coming back next week. We got some great content lined up. Brad and I are really excited about some of the topics that we've got lined up, and we're working on some good guests. So make sure you're coming back. Until then, we will leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?